He raised his flashlight and froze. Sitting high on the branch of the sitting tree was a figure, a man, or at least something resembling one, crouched 20 feet above the ground, hands gripping the branch above, mouth hanging wide open. Its gaze was locked on him, unblinking, like it had been waiting all along. In that moment, the boy realized with absolute certainty he was not alone out there. That image, the thing in the tree, was the beginning of a terrible series of events for one unfortunate 17-year-old boy in Mount Bachelor, Oregon. So get cozy and kindly mangle the like button, because when I first read this story, it made my skin crawl. This is the reportedly true account. It was 2010. A 17-year-old kid had just lost his father without warning. The whole family was wrecked, the kind of grief that makes life feel not real. There was also the practical fallout to deal with, decisions to make, property to settle, and one property in particular, the old family cabin in the mountains of Oregon. That place had a lot of memories: winter weekends, snowboarding runs, late-night movies, Dad teaching how to track animals and start a fire. After the funeral, the cabin felt like a ghost of everything good. His mom finally said they were going to sell it, but before they did, the boy thought it good to go up there and spend a few nights alone, just to say goodbye the only way he knew how. His mom agreed. With his dad's car loaded up with snacks, drinks, his PlayStation, extra layers, and his only companion, Midnight, a black labrador, he drove into the snowy mountains. The cabin sat where a small clearing had been carved out of a thick forest. It was a 2-story place built partly into the slope of the mountain. The back half of the building pressed into earth and rock. There were no windows back there, just a narrow slit of glass feeding light into the upstairs bathroom. The front was the opposite, a wall of glass and aged wood, a living room you could see right into from the clearing, and above it, the master bedroom with its walkout balcony. If you stood in that upstairs bedroom at night with the lights off, you could look straight across the open snowfield to the tree line. One tree was closer than the rest, left standing when the clearing was cut. It had a horizontal branch, perfectly flat, about 20 feet up, like a bench bolted into the sky. The family called it the sitting tree because if you managed to climb it, you'd have a perfect view of the surrounding area. Inside, he settled in fast. Drinks into the fridge, chips on the counter, PlayStation wired to the old TV. The dog, Midnight, ran around, sniffing everything in sight, happy to be back. For 2 days, it was exactly what he needed. Late-night gaming, microwave dinners, naps on the couch, and a couple of snowboarding trips to the mountain. It was the first time since the funeral he could breathe without feeling grief. On day 3, the boy woke to find the world outside buried under fresh snow. At least 2 feet had fallen overnight, and heavy flakes were still tumbling down. He figured he'd stay inside. No snowboarding today, no digging the car out, just a shut-in day with his dog, Midnight. Around midday, he opened the door to let her out. That's when he noticed them. Footprints, fresh, not his. They came out of the trees, cut across the edge of the clearing, skirted the front of the cabin, and then curved around toward the slope behind, disappearing up the mountain. He stood there staring, trying to make the facts line up. He hadn't had visitors. Neighbors were a ways off and not the type to post hole through a storm to say hello. Maybe a lost hiker? If so, why didn't they knock? He followed the line for a bit until the tracks faded into drifted snow on the hillside. He told himself it was nothing and went back in. The day felt different after that. quiet in the way that isn't peaceful. As dusk fell, he did what he always did, walked the downstairs, locked the front door, checked the windows, pulled every curtain shut until the living room turned into a dark box that reflected his own face back at him. Then he climbed the stairs with his dog, killed the lamp, and laid down in the master bed. Midnight, usually a shameless cuddler, stayed alert, ears pricked toward the stairwell. It started small, a sudden stiffening of Midnight's body, then a leap off the bed. She sprinted downstairs. He sat up, heart thumping now for no good reason. He could hear her pacing by the front door, nails clicking, a low whine building in her chest. When he came down, she was planted there, staring at the seam of the door like something was on the other side. She wanted out. He hesitated, then cracked the door and stepped into the cold with her. She crept forward slowly, low to the ground, eyes fixed on the clearing. He followed her gaze to the tree line, the same line where those footprints had come from, and specifically to the dark shape of the sitting tree. Midnight locked up, every muscle tense, not barking, not whining, just staring. That was worse than noise. He whispered her name, tried to nudge her along, but she wouldn't move. The feeling crawled up his back. Whatever had been out there earlier hadn't gone far. He grabbed her collar and pulled her inside. Back upstairs, Midnight refused to settle. She stood by the edge of the bed, watching the doorway, then the balcony curtains, then him, then back again, like she was keeping time with things he couldn't hear. He lay there, eyes on the ceiling, telling himself to relax, that the snow muffles sound and plays tricks. And then the roof creaked. It was not wind, it was steps, 6 of them, slow at first, then deliberate and heavy right over his head. There was no attic. The second-floor ceiling was the roof. The sound was close enough to feel. The first thought made no sense. Deer. Elk. But how would anything get up there? Even in the back, where the cabin was nestled into the side of a hill, the roof would still be over 8 feet away from anything it could use to climb up. There wasn't a tree close enough, no ladder, and nothing had crashed onto the shingles. It was as if whatever it was had been there a while and only decided to move now. The steps had stopped. A short while later, the dog's head trained on the balcony's sliding glass doors. The curtains were drawn. Part of him wanted to pull them tighter and never look, but the bigger part knew that not looking would be worse. A few minutes later, he stood, hands shaking a little, and edged to the door. In the dark room, he slid the curtains aside, unlatched the glass, and stepped out into the brittle cold. He tilted his head up. Nothing on the roofline. No silhouettes. He swept the flashlight along the edge. Clean, just a soft cap of snow. Relief came fast, but then went faster. He let the beam drift from the eaves to the clearing, across white ground, over the low porch roof, and onto the black line of trees. The cone of light found the sitting tree and stopped. There was a shape up there on the flat branch, human but wrong. Too still, too tall. It crouched with its hands hooked over the branch above as if keeping itself from sliding off. Its mouth hung open. 2 glinting eyes cut through the darkness, making its presence undeniable. He stood there. He couldn't move. A primal instinct told him moving might alert it to his presence. Quickly he realized it most definitely knew he was there. The flashlight slipped in his grip and clanged against the rail. He fumbled it up, the sound of his heart pounding through his ears. He swung the light back to the tree. Gone. Not climbing down. Not dropping. Just not there anymore. He backed into the room, pulled the door shut, and slid the lock so hard it rattled. Midnight was pressed to his leg now. He turned off the flashlight, closed the curtains, and sat on the bed with the dog up against his hip, both of them listening. So silent they could hear a pin drop. He could feel his pulse in his teeth. Just when the silence had begun to feel safe, a hesitant, hollow tap came from the other side of the wall. He looked at the bedroom door, then down the stairs in his mind, to the big windows that faced the clearing. Another tap, slightly to the left, then another, softer, as if a fingertip were testing thickness. He told himself it had to be a branch. Then the taps moved along the front of the house in a neat, steady line. Window, frame, siding, frame, window, as if someone were walking and idly dragging a knuckle. The sounds rounded the corner. He pictured the path along the side wall, the small gap between the cabin and the slope. The tap stopped. He held his breath. 10 seconds, 20, then tap, 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 right behind his head. It slowly moved towards the bathroom where he saw the slit of glass without a blind. Midnight's growl turned into a snarl, low and continuous. He did not turn to look at that window. He could not. Tap, tap, tap. The sound of nails on the glass pane rang out into the room. As he sat curled up in his bedsheets, he just knew that thing, whatever it was peering through the window at him. The tap slid away again, skirting the back of the cabin, then to the far side wall, methodical, then to the front again. Dread coiled in his gut, twisting tighter with every slow, deliberate pass. It paused at the front door, the wood a deeper thud under the glass, and then slid upward, as if a hand had lifted the door latch. He pictured the front door unlocked, even though he knew he made sure to lock it. A clambering sound on metal roofing began. It was climbing the roof of the front porch. It was on the balcony door now, right on the other side of the glass he had just opened. The sound came through the curtain like a percussive instrument, sending shock waves through his body. Tap, tap, tap. Minutes turned to hours. Again, the tapping left the glass and climbed, until it was on the roof again. This time it didn't walk. It probed, a steady, patient pattern, like a blind man learning a room with his cane. It moved directly over the bed. It stopped. He could almost feel the measurement of the pause. Then it began again. He did not sleep. Neither did Midnight. At some point, he started whispering the same thing over and over to himself. It's going to be daylight. It's going to be daylight. It's going to be daylight. When light finally did seep around the curtains, it felt like a held breath let go. The tapping had stopped maybe an hour before. He couldn't say. He stood, legs wobbly and numb, and walked to the balcony. He pulled the curtain aside, hand braced for a face on the other side of the glass. Nothing. He slid the door open. Cold air flooded in. The balcony boards were scored with prints, not boot treads, bare. The snow showed a path worn in circles as if someone had paced out there for hours, pausing at the line where the door met the frame. He tipped his head back. The roof, visible at the edge, was a stippled mess of shallow depressions. He leaned to the rail and looked down into the clearing. The snow was an ugly mandala of tracks, loops around the house, tight figure eights near the front windows, then a line that went straight to the sitting tree and from there into the forest. He didn't go looking for explanations. He closed the door, locked it, gathered Midnight and the few things he cared about, and started stuffing them into bags with a kind of speed that is clumsy. His plan was simple: leave. He loaded up the car, started the engine, and drove down the narrow road. but the storm had buried everything. Within minutes, the tires spun helplessly. He tried rocking the car, slamming the gas. Nothing worked. Finally, he remembered he had his dad's old tire socks for weather like this. He slid the top half of a tire sock over each rear tire. Turning the car on, he gave it just enough gas to rotate the tires 180 degrees. He stretched over the remaining half of each sock and hopped back in, ready to get the heck out of there. Flooring it, he managed to climb out of the hole he dug. He drives about 30 feet when he hears a subtle snap, then a thump, 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 a rhythmic flapping against the underside of the car. From there, it didn't take long until his tires spun a new crater in the snow. He was snowed in. Defeated, he dragged his bags back inside. Midnight followed, tail low, as if she knew they would have to endure at least one more night. As the sun came and went below the horizon, the forest became quiet again. And then a voice called from the trees, "Son, it's me." His father's voice. Perfect, familiar, impossible. Midnight growled low, pressing close. The voice circled, begging him to open the door, pleading. He nearly broke, but his dog's sense of the presence of danger protected him. Silence emerged. Somehow it unsettled the boy even more than the noises. Midnight became restless. She kept running from window to window, tearing up the downstairs like she was chasing a squirrel, until glass shattered. The house fell silent. He slowly descended the steps to find that one of the large windows at the front of the house was completely smashed, sending a chilling breeze into the room. Midnight was nowhere to be seen. A sudden yelp pierced the silence, the yelp of a dog, the kind of blood-curdling screeching that signifies pain. He bolted out the front door. He didn't care if he was going to die. When it comes to that dog, he feels a sense of duty. If Midnight was going to fight, he was going to fight right there alongside her. He chased after her path into the forest, flashlights swinging wildly. A bark echoed, then cut off. Silence. Then a sharp whimper. He found her curled up at the base of a tree, leg broken and mangled, red snow surrounding her body. He scooped her up, whispering, "I've got you, girl." Her body trembled, but she wagged her tail once, weak but real. The woods went dead quiet. No birds, no sounds, just the faint noise of the wind blowing past his ears. He stumbled forward, carrying her, legs heavy and weak, arms shaking under her weight. Now lost, he wandered aimlessly with his last glimmers of hope fading away. What seemed like an hour went by when, in the distance, he spotted a beam of light traveling through the trees. It was disappearing and reappearing through the tree line, left to right. He picked up the pace, exhausted but didn't know where else to go, until the trees finally broke, and he found himself standing in front of a well-salted road. Headlights cut through the mist, a lone car on a narrow highway. He lurched into the open, waving one arm desperately. The driver braked, staring in shock as the boy staggered onto the pavement with the limp dog in his arms. They hauled him inside. He never looked back, and he never returned.